if you make a lot of bread, what you might end up with is bread sitting on the board having gone stale. So because I run bread courses, I end up with quite a lot of bread going stale on my board. So what I do is I make it into other things that I can eat, more delicious things. So this is about 250 grams of different crusts of white bread that I've got. You can use any bread that you have to hand, okay? So if you've got wholemeal or rye or whatever you've got on your board, please use it. I've broken it up into little bits and now I'm adding 300 grams of milk. I'm going to let that sit now for at least half an hour. I'm going to cover it with a cloth, let it sit, soak up that milk, come back, stir it and break it up a little bit more. I'm going to add mixed dried fruit to my bread pudding. I like candied peel, but if you don't, choose whichever dried fruit you like. I'm going to scrape the zest of this orange and pop that in with the fruit along with the juice so that whilst the bread's soaking, the fruit can soak in the juice of the orange too and soak up some of that and become lovely and plump. So you just want to zest off the peel and not the pith underneath. So make sure you keep rotating your orange around your grater. So just going to scrape off under there. Now the pips, I don't want those to go in, so what I'm going to do is hold my hand and squeeze the orange through my hand so that I can catch the pips. So I'm going to let those soak for the same amount of time as the bread soaks, so for about half an hour. In the meantime, I'm going to melt 50 grams of butter ready to add in. Okay, so this has been sitting for about half an hour, soaking up the milk. So I just want to give it a quick mix with a fork to break it up a bit more. I've got 50 grams of melted butter going in, 1 organic egg, 75 grams of soft brown sugar, and just breaking those lumps up so it's easier to mix through when I pop it into the bowl. You could use dark brown sugar if you have it. That will make the pudding a darker colour, a more treacly taste. You could use caster sugar, granulated, whatever you have in the cupboard. And then I've got the 150 grams of dried fruit with the juice and zest of the orange, so that's going in. And then I want about 2 teaspoons of mixed spice. You could use whichever spice you like. I really like mixed spice in this, but you could go for cinnamon or cardamom. Oh, it smells absolutely glorious. So you know, when you've just got that crust lying around, you can make yourself a real treat rather than wasting it and popping it in the bin. So I've got my loaf tin. It's a £2 loaf tin that I usually use for all my breads. I've put a parchment liner in there just to make it easier to get the bread pudding out later. And what I like to do, which you don't have to, but this is a bread pudding is something we often had when we were kids because my mum never wasted anything. So if there was a crust of bread, it was made into bread pudding or bread and butter pudding, what have you. So we often had this. It was a real treat. And now pudding is a bit of a misnomer because we never actually had it for pudding. We used to have it with a cup of tea. Milky tea, bread pudding reminds me of my childhood. And we always had it sprinkled with demerara sugar on top. So you get that lovely crunchy texture. And actually, there isn't a great deal of sugar in the actual recipe compared to some that you see online. So, you know, that little bit extra on top is a bonus. Okay, so that's now going to go in the oven, 180 degrees centigrade, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, gas mark 4. And because it's quite deep, that's going to take 45 minutes, an hour, maybe an hour and a quarter, depending on your oven. So I'm going to check it after 45 minutes and see if it needs longer. Okay, I baked it for probably about an hour in the end at 180 degrees centigrade. just keep an eye on it after 45 minutes. It may take slightly longer than an hour or less, so just keep an eye. It's been out the oven for about 20 minutes, so it's still warm, but it's not hot, because when it's hot, it's still slightly jiggly. I can describe it as that. So when you put your hand on it, you might feel that it's a little bit soft on the inside, but it should feel fairly set. And then by the time it's cooled, it will properly set down. So I just want to show you what it's like when it's warm. So let's just cut a piece. It still needs some setting, but there you go. You can eat that now hot with cream if you wanted to. But it has this beautiful soft texture, which just gets more sturdy as it cools. But if you can imagine, that was a crust that has been sitting on my breadboard for several days. It had got really stale. There was no way, not even for toast was it going to be any good, but transformed with eggs, milk, butter, fruit, orange, and you get this beautiful thing that everybody now can eat. So reduce food waste, think of new ways of using up your crust.